All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation. We're here to talk about property taxes, protests, valuations, exemptions, and payment options. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today, we have Ms. Rachel Gutierrez. Also, our presenting partners with the Harris Central Appraisal District, we have Ms. Mabel Menifee and a host of team members who's going to be presenting information for you today, along with the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and we have Ms. Shay Pinkowski, who will also be presenting for us today as well. But also included in the partnership, we have the Earl Carl Institute, the Houston Bar Association, Lone Star Legal Aid, Texas Legal Services Center, and Houston Volunteer Lawyers. And together we all make up a month of service. And basically what a month of service is the collaboration of all 9 of our organizations. We started coming together several years ago in the effort to create a larger impact and reach more people throughout the city, the surrounding counties, to provide more information to the community, resources, information relative to asset protection, asset building, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. So we want to thank you guys for joining us this afternoon and hope that you find the information that is presented for you today to be beneficial. There will be a lot of information covered, so we are encouraging you all to ask questions. There will be people monitoring the chat. If you are interested in putting your questions into the chat section, then please feel free to do so. We are also, you have the opportunity at the end of the presentation as well to either raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask your questions directly of the presenters as well. We only ask that you try to keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can, so that way your personal detail information is not getting out there for everybody to have access to, as we are recording the session, as well as broadcasting live on our social media platform on Facebook. So again, we want to try to protect your privacy as much as we possibly can. If you do find yourselves in need of a particular, specific request or something like that, then if you would put that information into the chat, and the folks that are representing the county tax office as well as the appraisal district will be answering and monitoring the chat as well, so that they can answer you guys specifically about your personal issue. In addition to that, if you are joining us on Facebook, I am monitoring Facebook. You can feel free to type your questions in the comment section on Facebook, and I'll make sure that those questions are read aloud for you at the end as well. So with that being said, again, thank you guys for joining us this afternoon. There's, again, a lot of information to be covered, and we want to go ahead and get started. So Miss Mabel, oh, actually, no, Shay, let's have you, no, Rachel, we'll have you introduce yourself. Then Shay, we'll have you, and then Miss Mabel, introduce yourself and the rest of your team, and then we'll move on into the presentation. So Rachel.
Yes, thank you, Nia. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Mayor Whitmire and our Director Herbert Sims, we welcome you to the A Month of Service partnership. And my name is Rachel Gutierrez. I'm Community Outreach Coordinator for the Department of Neighborhood's Office of Neighborhood Engagement. We are here to service you and provide you with the tools and resources that you need to empower yourself, educate yourself, but also those around you. The partnership has worked hard to provide you with these different workshops on an array of subjects that not only may affect you, but affect those, again, around you. So we do appreciate your engagement. And we also appreciate for you to spread the word for those that you come across with in your communities, and invite them to attend these free workshops. What we've seen is that a lot of individuals have questions and don't know where to go to. So if you can be the beacon of light to them to let them know hey, these are resources that you can take advantage of, we would greatly appreciate that. And if there is a workshop that we currently don't offer and you see that it may be a need for yourself or those around you, please feel free to contact myself or Nia, and we will work hard to try to get that put on for you. But again, we appreciate you, and I'll put my contact information in the chat if you need to contact me directly. But again, enjoy the workshop and thank you for attending.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Rachel and Nia. My
Okay.
name is Rachel Menifee.
We're gonna have Shay go first.
Oh, sorry, I'm in a.
Miss Shay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure if my video is showing quite yet, but my computer's thinking about it. My name is Shay Pinkowski. I'm with the Office of Ann Harris Bennett. We are very excited to be able to share some information for you that is valuable and hopefully will help you guys in some situations that you might be having, or answer some questions that you might have about your property taxes this year or next year. If you have any questions, we are more than happy to assist you in getting those answered. I will have contact information up at the end of my presentation. So if you have any questions that are specific to your situation, please feel free to give us a call or send us an email so that we can get you some assistance and whatever it is that you might have some complications with. But I look forward to be able to share some information with you guys. Thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to be able to explain some things to you guys today.
All right. Now, Miss Mabel.
Now it's my turn.
Yes,
Hey,
ma'am.
everybody. As you can tell, I'm excited about today's workshop. As Nia mentioned, my name is Mabel Menifee. I'm with the Harris Central Appraisal District. I'm in the Community Outreach and Communications Department as well. I guess it is the season this time of year for people who to receive their annual value notices from the Harris Central Appraisal District, and what those determine in terms of the market value of your property, as well as ultimately how they affect your taxes. Today, one of the reasons I'm excited is because we've got a number of experts on board with me to answer your questions about protesting and values. And we're also going to talk a little bit about exemptions and how those work into it. And so today we've got, as I mentioned before, several senior employees from our residential property division, including Sarah Hatch, Jamie Stanley, Joe Carr, and as I mentioned before, Tawana Nelson from our exemptions department. So feel free to ask away with those questions that you have today. We want you to be able to understand what the protest process is all about and how that fits into the entire property tax plan. If it is your right to protest your property value if you disagree with HCAS, or even if you're curious as to how we came about to determine that value, you're going to learn why protesting it is an important way to just find out that information as well. So again, I would like to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank the partnership for making this forum available for us to provide this information to the taxpaying public. So we'll go ahead now and start the presentation, beginning with Sarah Hatch, who is with our residential property division.
All right, give me a moment to get my screen shared here. Okay.
You're good.
All right. So my name is Sarah Hatch. I'm a residential value analyst with Harris Central Appraisal District. And I'll go over a few things here today about what we do and how we do it. And just we're going to talk about the role of appraisal districts. We're going to talk about the valuation notices that you've likely already received. We're going to talk about protesting your value, and then we'll also be talking about exemptions. And then the tax assessor collector will be talking about tax bill calculations, payments, and collections after that. So the role of appraisal districts. we value your property for the purpose of property taxes. And what those property taxes do is they support important local services, especially because we have no state income tax. Those property taxes are an important part of having those things funded. Things like our schools, public education, our police and fire protection, hospitals, first responder type things, and road maintenance and other sort of infrastructure things that need to happen as well. And all of what we do comes from property tax laws that originate with the Texas state legislature. So all of that comes down from the property tax code from the legislature. So as far as our responsibilities, the appraisal district is responsible to appraise all county property, whether that's residential property, commercial, agricultural, industrial, and even personal property for businesses. Where our responsibility is to appraise all of those types of property at 100% of market value, and as of January 1st of each year. So every year we value all that property, and we are required by tax code to value it at 100% of market value. We're also responsible for administering exemptions and certifying the appraisal rolls, which then we hand over to the taxing jurisdictions so that they can set their rates accordingly. So there's several important dates in the appraisal calendar every year. As I mentioned, January 1st is the effective date of appraisal every year. So each year your value is based on what the condition of your property was as of that day. Not as of December 31st, not as of January 2nd, but as of January 1st. So whatever happens, on another day, what we're concerned with is what is the condition of your property on that day. May 15th is the protest deadline. Protests must be filed by this date for any value change to occur before values are provided to the jurisdictions and the tax bills are calculated. So that deadline is May 15th or 30 days from the date of notice, whichever is later. So if you did not receive your notice yet, if you receive your notice a bit later, then you have 30 days from the date that's on that notice of when it was sent out. In October or November, the tax bills get calculated and are mailed out. And then the following year on February 1st, taxes become delinquent if they're not paid. So they have to be paid by January 31st. And on February 1st, they become delinquent. So HCAT appraisals, we are again required by tax code to be at 100% of market value. And every other year, the state conducts a study of how we're doing on that. They conduct a market value study to ensure that we are valuing at 100% of market value. If we're too far off, then we fail those studies. So we do have to be following what the market is doing when we value our properties. This is conducted by the process of mass appraisal. So we're looking at whole groups of properties at a time. We're not looking at one individual house and making one judgment call on that. When we set these values, we're valuing areas and looking at what the market did in that area and appraising those properties in mass. Now that value, as I said, is derived mainly based on sales. That's the main thing that we're looking at, because if you want to determine market value, you have to be looking at what the market is doing. So value changes. Home values are reviewed annually by HCAT appraisers. So every year we reassess. Every year stands on its own, and sale prices can go up or down or stay fairly flat due to various market forces. So whatever the market is doing each year, that's what we're looking at to try and determine a value for each year. So regardless of what it may have done the year before, what we're looking at is that individual year and what the market has done that year. And then the tax rates are set by the jurisdictions or the taxing authorities. Those are calculated on the appraised value or the market value that we've placed on the property, and then minus any exemptions that apply to that property. And then they apply the tax rate. So it's that value times the tax rate is the actual dollar amount that ends up on the tax bill. And so here's an example of what one of those notices of value looks like that are being sent out. Up on the top left, you have a description of the property itself, where it is, and its legal description. On the top right, you see highlighted there, you have an I-file number. That number is important when you're filing your protest, especially if you want to file online. You need that I-file number that gives you access to filing your protest online. And so you see on there, we have a notice that as of January 1st of 2024, this is what your appraised value and market value are. And we'll talk a little bit about the distinction between those, but what we are really setting as values is the market value. So appraised value is the number that's actually used in calculating tax bills. Now this may be the same as the market value, but it also could be lower because of the 10% appraisal cap for properties with a homestead exemption. So if you have a homestead exemption on your property, there's a limit to the amount of increase in your appraised value year over year. And so there may be a bit of a gap between how much the market increased versus how much your appraised value increased. Now, the market value is the value at which that property would sell to a willing buyer on the open market. It's that simple. It's just based on sales and what similar homes sold for in your area. So HCAD's primary role is to establish an annual market value, and then protests are based on that market value. They're not based on the appraised value because that takes exemptions into account, and there are a lot of factors that can go into that. But when we have protests, when we set the values, we're setting a market value. When we have protests, it's about that market value and whether or not that is an appropriate value for what your home could fetch on the market. So as we've mentioned many times, you have the right to protest your value, and the protest deadline is on the form. We mentioned that protest deadline is May 15th or 30 days after the date on the notice. And let me go back to that notice real quick, just so I can point out where that date is. It's right there on the top in the middle. This example is April 19th, 2024. So whatever that date is on the notice that you receive, you have 30 days from that day. And that I-file number that was highlighted on there, again, you use that unique number on your notice in order to file your protest. And the protest applies to the market value that was set or based on equity. So you can protest based on sales in your area and the market itself, or you can protest based on equity, meaning what other similar homes in your neighborhood were noticed at for their market value. Now, again, we're dealing with market value and not appraised value. So we're not really looking at what your appraised value is compared to your neighbors, because they may have had an exemption on their home for 30 years and you've only had it for 10. And so there's a lot of different factors that can influence the appraised value. So we are looking at market value, and we can compare your market value as it was noticed to your neighbors. So what determines your property value? There are a lot of things that go into that determination. First of all, we have about 7,000 neighborhoods, maybe more than that. We have a lot of neighborhoods, and we look at each of those neighborhoods, and ideally when we're comparing or when we're determining the market value for your property, what we're looking at are things that happened within your individual neighborhood or maybe in the neighborhoods around your neighborhood. But we're looking at your area. We also consider the condition of the property. Again, the condition as of January 1st. We're looking at recent purchases and comparable sales. So if you recently purchased your home, that's going to be our best indication of its market value, as long as it was a typical open market transaction. And if not, then we're looking at comparable sales in your area. And we're also looking at other amenities. So you may have extra factors to your home, such as a pool or an outdoor kitchen or other extra structures on the property, things like that. Or maybe you don't, but the comparables that we're using do, and so we're adjusting for that. But you you are the expert. Nobody knows your home like you do. So when protesting, you can give us all of that information. We may not know what the condition of your property is as of January 1st. We can make our best estimate, but we're not inside every home. And so to the best of our knowledge, we may have it in average condition, and you may be able to come in and show us that there are issues and that it's in less than average condition. So that's one of the things that, again, you are the best source of knowledge on that. So methods and types of protests. There is a paper form that you can mail or submit electronically. There's also online forms where you can file your protest through our iFile system. In that iFile system, you also have the option to opt into our iSettle program, which gives you the opportunity to possibly receive an offer electronically via email of a value that you can settle on. If you receive such an offer that acts as your informal hearing, you can choose to accept that offer, or you can reject that offer and go to a formal hearing. If you don't receive an offer through iSettle, or if you don't opt into iSettle, then you have the opportunity to go to an informal hearing, which is a one-on-one meeting, either virtual or in person, with an HCAT appraiser, where you will talk with that appraiser, again, give them whatever information you have about the condition of your property, or about maybe sales in your area that you feel are particularly comparable to you, and see if you can come to an agreement. If you're not able to come to an agreement during that one-on-one meeting, then you have the option to go to a formal hearing with the appraisal review board. Again, those can be either virtual or in person. And now, as of the last couple of years, you also have the option to either appear before a panel of 3 ARB members, or to have just one ARB member on your panel who will make the determination about your value. Beyond that, there are additional methods, including arbitration, if the determination of the ARB is still not amenable to you. So some things to expect after you file a protest. You'll get a notification of your hearing date, when you can have either that informal meeting or your formal hearing. You can expect to receive our evidence packet at least 14 days prior to your hearing, so you can review the evidence that we're using to go over your value. And that evidence packet can be rather large. It contains a lot of information. It contains information about your property that we have on file. It contains sales that are in your immediate neighborhood. It also contains sales from surrounding neighborhoods. We have sales of improved properties, or properties with homes on them. It also includes sales of vacant land, if there is any in your area. Our evidence also includes interactive maps that put nearby sales into perspective and show you where they are on the map compared to your property's location, and other additional points of important property data. Now, because of state confidentiality laws, this information is only available after you file a protest. So based on confidentiality, we're not able to give you this evidence or this information beforehand so that you can decide whether or not to file. You can only get this information after you have filed a protest. So here is an example of what our evidence looks like online. You have several different bits of information here. As I mentioned, you have the general hearing evidence, which is our main evidence packet. You'll also have sales for nearby neighborhoods that are in your area, and a land sales map, and then as we mentioned, another interactive map there to see the sales compared to your property. Now, because we have so many protests that come through each year, and we want to give everybody enough time and consideration, we do have to limit that time so that we can get to everybody. So you do have limited time, usually about 15 minutes per hearing. So please come prepared, be ready with what is the most important, most relevant information, and be ready to present that in a clear and concise way. Organize your evidence in the same order as the main talking points you want to go through. Bring copies of evidence for yourself and for the appraiser you're meeting with. And if you're in a formal hearing, bring enough copies for any panel members if you're coming in person as well. So if you're coming in for a three-member ARB hearing, you'll need to have 5 copies, one for you, one for the appraiser, and one for each of those board members. So as I mentioned, the hearings generally, we try to keep them to about 15 minutes so we can get to everybody. Now, the most recent change that we have, this was passed as part of the November 2023 voter referendum, is something called Circuit Breaker. This was a 3-year pilot project. This applies to non-homesteaded properties valued at or below $5 million for 2024. So while our homestead properties have a limit on increase of 10%, now we have the circuit breaker that applies to properties without a homestead exemption. The appraised value for the current year cannot exceed 20% of the property's appraised value for the preceding year. So now that increase is limited to 20% for non-homesteaded properties. This excludes homestead and agricultural properties. Those already have considerations in place. And in order to qualify for this, property owner must have owned the property as of January 1st of 2023. So this provides a 20% cap on value increase, similar to the homestead cap. And with that, we'll be moving on to exemptions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tawana Nelson with the Harris Central Appraisal District. I'm in the exemptions department. We're going to discuss the exemptions and information on how you can obtain them and what offers we have available. So first and foremost, we'll go over what they are, how they can save you money, and how do you get them. Your exemptions are administered by HCAT. It exempts a portion of the property's value from taxation, your primary residence only, and it's used by taxing authorities in calculating your property tax bill. Exemptions exclude part of your property from taxation by reducing the appraised value before tax rates are applied. The most common exemptions are the general residence homestead exemption, the over 65 exemption, the over 55 surviving spouse, the disability exemption, disabled veterans exemption, and other service-related exemptions. The most common exemptions, the general residence homestead exemption, you must own and occupy the home as your primary residence. Documentation required will be the proof of ownership and a driver's license or Texas state identification card. The homestead exemption provides a 10% appraisal increase cap. Also, it provides a $100,000 school tax exemption by state law. Other exemptions may be offered by various jurisdictions. The city, county, school district, it depends on where you live. The over 65 disability exemption, for the over 65 exemption, you qualify for the entire year that you turn 65. For the disability exemption, you qualify for the entire year that you become eligible to receive disability benefits under federal old age survivors and disability insurance. You would need to provide a physician statement as well. Benefits for either exemption are the school tax ceiling or freeze. The exemptions granted to homeowners with general residence homestead exemptions, and you're eligible for tax deferral and to pay taxes in installments without penalties. Other exemptions may be granted by individual jurisdictions as well. The over 55 surviving spouse exemption, you qualify if your deceased spouse died in a year in which they qualified for the over 65 or disability exemption. The surviving spouse must be 55 years of age or older on the date of death. You receive all the over 65 exemption benefits, and the school tax ceiling continues and is transferable. You're also eligible for a tax deferral and to pay taxes in installments without penalties. So the airship exemption, is the property for which this application is submitted an air property, and do other air property heirs to the property occupy the property. The steps for receiving the homestead exemption, if it is air property, you would go to in section 3 of the homestead exemption application. There's once you enter your property information, there's a question that says, is the applicant identified on deed or other recorded instrument? If you choose no, this is where you would enter your airship information. So if no, required documentation must be provided. And you would answer these 2 questions: whether or not if the property for which this application is submitted an air property, you would check yes, and then do other air property owners occupy the property? You would choose which answer is appropriate for you. And the information needed with your application is an affidavit establishing ownership of interest in the property. This can be an airship affidavit or Form 50-114-A affidavits. The death certificate for the prior owner of the property, a copy of the property's most recent utility bill, and a citation of any court record relating to the applicant's ownership of the property if available. This is an example of how your appraised value versus your market value will look with the homestead appraisal cap example. Without an exemption limiting the yearly increase, the market value and appraised value will be the same. So this is your market and appraised value from in each tax year without the homestead exemption. The market and appraised value with the exemption, if you notice for 2022, the values are the same, but for 2023, whereas the market value raised to 120,000, the appraised value was only raised by 10%, which made it $110,000. The immediate residence homestead exemption, you can qualify for that upon occupying the home. You must apply before the first anniversary of the date the property was acquired. If the previous owner did not have exemptions or the home was never occupied, the exemption will be granted as follows. The first year will be a prorated exemption. The second year, you'll receive the full exemption, and that second year also establishes the cap eligibility base year. If the home was previously owned and receiving exemptions, the previous owner's exemptions will remain for the remainder of the applicable tax year. How to apply. You can mail a paper form. You can submit your application online through our website. You can use our mobile app, or you can submit via email. Depending on when submitted, the processing time may take longer. It's important to submit everything at one time to avoid delaying in processing. Once applied to your account, you will be notified. A how-to video is available at www.hcad.org. Forms, popular forms. You can follow as you fill out the form. This is a showing of our website, and where there are different options. You can go here to obtain the exemptions forms. You can also explore your protest options, and then you can also make an appointment for an in-person visit. as far as for the website, if at the top in that first banner, you'll see where it says property search, about, careers, online services. In this section is where you will find forms, and you go down to popular forms, and that's where you will find your homestead exemption application. You may contact us in different ways. You can come to our location. We're located at 13013 Northwest Freeway, Houston, Texas 77040. Our general telephone number is 713-957-7800. You can go to our website at www.hcad.org, or you can visit us online at hcad.org/contact us. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Okay, Ms. Mabel, is there anything else that you guys would like to add, or any one of the other specialists on the line that have anything to include before we move over to Shay's presentation?
So I think we've been answering questions in the chat that have been coming fast and furious.
I see, I'm watching.
But I think we will why don't we go ahead and have Shay do her presentation, and then we can address all those remaining questions and add any additional information to the current one we're answering afterwards.
Okay, all right, good deal. All right, Ms. Shay, go right ahead.
Alrighty, thank you everyone. Give me 1 second to share my screen here. And hopefully my video will start showing as well. Okay. Alrighty, well, thank you. My name is Shay Pinkowski. I'm with the Office of Ann Harris Bennett Customer Service Department, and I'm happy to be here and explain some things to you and answer some questions. So the Office of Ann Harris Bennett is your Harris County Tax Assessor Collector. We do collect for multiple jurisdictions. See. So just a general overview of property taxes. We do maintain approximately 1.7 million tax accounts for the county of Harris County. We collect about $8 billion in property taxes every year, and we disperse taxes on behalf of about 78 jurisdictions this tax year. Including Harris County, your Houston ISD taxes, City of Houston, and Harris County Flood Control District. Let's see. Maybe. Okay, so just a brief view of how to calculate your tax bill. We do begin with the taxable value of your property that is given to us by the Harris Central Appraisal District. We apply your taxable value by your tax rate, which differs depending on the jurisdictions that are applicable to your property. And that is generally how we collect for your property tax and how we determine your tax bill. So that bill that you get from us starting in October all the way to, very end of December usually, that would be how we determine that tax bill. Apologies, I think my computer's being difficult. Okay. So we did have some recent property tax changes that affected your bill these past couple of years, including an increase for your over 65 and disabled exemptions. It went from 229,000 to 250,000, which is good, along with your City of Houston increase for over 65 and disabled exemptions from 160,000 to 260,000. Those of you who have a general homestead and collect pay your taxes towards the school. The general homestead exemption for your school jurisdiction specifically increased as well. Actually, this has changed. You know, I do apologize. Bear with me just one moment. This slideshow is incorrect. Nia, is there someone else who would need to present after me, just so that I'm not holding everyone up?
No, you were the last, but we can actually probably get to some of the questions, Mabel, if you want to go back
Sure.
where
Yeah, and if you don't mind doing that really quick, Mabel, I'll go ahead and see if I
Okay.
can find the correct presentation, because that information is from last year.
There was, I think Joe and Jamie have been answering them. There was a gentleman that may not have gotten his answer, because he said he lost connection. Mr. Rodriguez had one. And I'm not sure where, but where did
is that
that
the
go?
one about the backdated taxes?
I'm sorry?
Is that the one about the backdated taxes?
No, that was the one, about how big of an area do we look at in, the groups?
Yeah, and as we told them, we start out with your neighborhood section, going out into the full neighborhood, and then to anything surrounding the neighborhood. That's how we usually go when we're comparing your home, but we're always going to start out with that section, and hopefully there's a bunch of sales in there. We want to start out as close as possible to your actual home before we go any further.
All right, thank you, Joe. Was there, Nia, did you
There's
see, you said you saw some?
there are a few of them that I'd like to actually kind of read aloud, even though I know that you guys answered them in the chat, but
Mhm.
other people that are not looking at the chat, or certainly those folks that are on Facebook that cannot see the chat, may have the exact same kind of questions that other people here have asked already.
Right,
And that being one of the questions that Joe just answered. It says Texas is not required disclosure state, so sales are not published. Does HCAD have access to HAR or MLS to get the data? If not, how do you get it? How do you get comparable sales data?
HCAD has access to all of the actual disclosed sales via a sales vendor. We get all of our information from them. If anything is undisclosed, if they go that step when they're selling their house and decide to not disclose their sale price, then we don't have it. The vendor doesn't have it. No one has it because, as stated, the non-disclosure state. But we do end up with enough information to make a judgment on your neighborhood.
Okay.
and that's another
I do
reason,
have to
oh, and that's another reason
just
why
answer,
we encourage you. Oh, go ahead, Jamie, I'm sorry.
just about the sales. We also send out sales questionnaires. So where the property owners themselves, they tell us how much they spent on those homes. So we enter in the sales questionnaires, and we also enter in the sales that we received from our vendors.
So for those homeowners, when you purchase your house, when you get that, there's a form that generally comes in the mail from the appraisal just asking you all of those questions. Know that that's a legitimate form that came from HCAD. So if you're not sure when you get that form, because I'm a licensed realtor and I get some of my clients that ask me about that form all the time. Like, why are these people asking me for this information? Do I need to send a copy of my HUD statement or, my disclosure statement along with this? And why do they want this information? And who is this? It is a legitimate form. And if you're unsure which one it is, call the appraisal district office just to be on the safe side.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Is there a time limit to discuss property tax protest on a virtual call? I'm not sure about that question.
Well, if it's in terms
Oh, it's
of
typically 15 minutes. Okay, I see it.
yeah,
Sorry, I was trying to come off mute. Yes, it's a 15-minute whenever you're doing an informal meeting, or if you're doing a hearing. It's going to be the exact same time frame. We're going to give you 15 minutes because, as you know, we have 1.8 billion properties. We have thousands and thousands and millions of protests, so we have to get through all of them. If you have something that needs to be corrected on your account, you can call our offices outside of that meeting. But if it's just about your value, then that'll be handled within your protest meeting.
And that's regardless if it's virtual or in person.
Yes, and just to further clarify that a little bit, I think a lot of times when we tell people that there's 15 minutes, they think that means they have 15 minutes to talk. What that means is we're trying to keep 15 minutes for the total duration of the hearing. So within that 15 minutes is time for you to present your information to us, time for us to review our evidence and present it to you, and time to try and come to an agreement, or for the ARB to come to a determination. So it's really not 15 minutes of talking time. It's, give us concisely in about 5 minutes, or, maybe 7 minutes, what the most important information about your property is, because we're trying to get the whole thing wrapped up in that 15 minutes.
Okay. In regards to an informal meeting, do you wait to send in the protest or send it in and still request an informal meeting?
Send in your protest, and that's how you get your informal meeting. You automatically have a formal hearing that comes with your protest, but you can opt in for that informal meeting first. They'll schedule that. You don't have to show up to that, but if you want to do your informal meeting, have to sit down with an appraiser, you come to that first. If you don't come to an agreement there, then there's your opportunity to do it with the appraisal review board.
Okay. Does having an inspection on done on a home a good form of evidence for a hearing?
An inspection is a great form of evidence. It does help us to understand maybe some condition issues that may be going on with your house, and it kind of gives us a depth to it. Another thing I would add to that is maybe some repair estimates, photographs, and different things of that nature to kind of help us with the value when it comes to that.
Okay, let me ask this question as it relates to other evidence. And I know that there's some date factors that contribute to what's the time frame of when these estimates should be given. Like, is it after the first of the year, before the first of the year? What's the timeline on information that is presented at the protest hearing? How old can it be, or how new does it need to be?
We're looking for information that would show us what the condition of the home was as of January 1st. So if this is something that happened previously and it's still in that condition, getting it after January 1st definitely lets us know that. And if you got it within that year, that kind of gives us that same information. So we're looking for something basically that's going to let us know that this information is still up to date as of January 1st. So if you get it estimated before then, give us some pictures afterwards showing us, hey, on this current data that I just took these pictures, it's still in this condition.
Okay. How far back can you claim an exemption? I bought a home in 2021 and I never requested it.
Well,
You can
go ahead.
you can request for an exemption up to two for the prior 2 tax years that you qualified for. So in essence, today in 2024, you can request tax year 2022 if it's for the residential homestead exemptions and the over 65s and the total disabled veterans. If you're requesting a disabled veteran that has a percentage like 70 to 100% or anything less than the 100%, you have up to, you can go back as far as 5 tax years, which would today would be 2019.
And another question, how many exemptions can you have total?
You can have the full exemptions that you qualify for. The only 2 exemptions that you cannot have at the same time are the over 65 exemption and the disabled person exemption. So you can either have the over 65 exemption or the disability exemption, but you cannot have both. And The only time that does not apply is if there are two property owners that own the property 50-50. One person can be over 65 and the other one can be disabled, but they're only getting their 50% of that exemption.
Okay. And I think I ask this question every time because I've had this before about when you've got two people that own a home, you said only 50% of the property is exempt when it's one person that's over the age of 65. That doesn't apply to a couple, correct?
If they're yes, well, okay, so if they're a married couple in our systems, then they would get the entire the full 100% of the exemption. But if you have two people who own the property 50-50, then they'll get their 50% of the exemption that they apply for.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Okay.
Because I had a mother and daughter that bought, and then the mother was over 65, and then they didn't realize that only 50% of the home would qualify for the exemption as opposed to the total, because it was daughter and mother and not a
Right.
married couple, so they don't get the full exemption. So
Right.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. How do you choose the correct reason to protest? What are the options?
That'll be a Jamie or a Joe's question.
Sorry, I was
Right, so
talking.
a property
Hey.
owner can protest unequal appraisal. That's an equity argument. They can also protest market value, as in the value is too high. Also protest that the property is incorrect. We have incorrect. You can check everything that applies to you. You can check market value is too high, and
I think we lost her.
Oh, I thought it was me. That's why I was sitting here looking around like this, like what?
He kind of went out. Yeah, what
Okay.
she's saying is you can look at your market. You can protest based on your market value. You can protest based on the value of the actual new construction that has been done to your home. Like you had something done and we put a price on it versus what you actually paid for. You can protest that. You can protest the equity of your home, basically saying we didn't treat your property like we treated everybody else's property. And you can protest if your exemptions are incorrect on your account. So those are some of the things that you can put on your protest form.
Can you all explain the difference for people that the market value versus as a house being sold on the open market versus the appraised tax value?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Each year, you're doing a hearing based on your market value. That's what we're saying your home would sell at based on other sales in the neighborhood. So that's what your protest is based on and everything like that. Your taxable value or appraised value is the value you have after your exemptions have been applied to your account. If you have a homestead exemption, things of that nature, that's usually a 10% cap, and it's a 10% cap from your previous year's taxable value. So if you bought a home at 100,000, you got your homestead, and the next year it goes up to 120,000 for market, then your taxable value will be 110,000 in that case. But for example, if it only goes up to 108,000, then your market and your taxable will be the same because it'll be 108 for both of them because it didn't go the full 10%.
Okay. Can one of you guys give the phone number again for the HCAD office, just for those folks that need it again? Just want to repeat it.
Our telephone number is 713-957-7800.
Okay.
And I would like to mention too that for anyone who's who may have filed a protest, and maybe they are, as we get into the protest season, maybe they need to change that. They've received their appointment for when their hearing is or whatever, and maybe they need to change that. There are the numbers to call specifically to change your protest appointments information. They are posted on our website as well. So so if it's specific to your hearing, there are other numbers on our website that you can reach a person as well. You want to add anything to that, Tawana? I just wanted to make sure that since we're going into hearing season, people know to look for that. I need to change my hearing appointment phone number.
I'm sorry, you said for the if they need to change their hearing information?
If they need to change their hearing appointments, there's a separate phone number out there.
For rescheduling.
Rescheduling, thank you, for rescheduling your hearings, so that those folks don't have to wait in the queue for general information. They can go straight to that rescheduling line.
What I can do is I can locate that telephone number. I don't have that one directly offhand, but I know that there is a telephone number that is specifically for rescheduling. So
Right.
if you'll give me a few moments, I can locate that information.
And it's actually it's fairly easy to find on the website. I just wanted people who may be planning to file their protest and are getting ready for their hearings to know that there is a separate number if they need to reschedule those. And that is available on the website as well.
Let's see.
There was a question here. Do I lose the chance for obtaining a settlement if it's offered? Should you choose a hearing, or do you actually lose it? So meaning that if I want to protest, there's a settlement offer that's presented, and I choose to go ahead and still have the hearing because you don't agree with it, then the offer that was presented, do you lose that, or is that the...
Yes, with each stage that you go through in the process, you lose the offer from the previous stage. So if you have an informal hearing and they give you an offer and you don't accept it there, and then you decide I'm going to go to a formal hearing and try my hand there, then you're starting from scratch each step. So each time somebody makes you an offer, you want to be careful to think about that offer in that moment and try to make the best decision possible, because again, you're starting from scratch at each step. They have no idea what you talked about in the previous hearing.
Okay, and then what do you need to prove that you're a surviving spouse or disabled vet? The surviving spouse of a disabled vet.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question for me?
What needs to be provided if you are a surviving spouse of a disabled vet?
Okay, so the surviving spouse of a disabled vet will need a letter from Veterans Affairs stating that they are the survivor of the veteran, and also the veteran's disability rating at the time of death.
Okay. All right. Have homeowners been previously more successful in winning their protest by attending the hearing on their own or hiring a third party to handle the protest?
We've seen no difference in homeowners handling their protest or agents handling their protest. It's pretty much the same because we're all using the same evidence. You're going to get the exact same type of hearing. It just is whatever works for you and is more convenient for you.
Yeah, if you feel like being bothered with it or not being bothered and you want somebody else to handle it, it's completely up to you. So, all right.
What I would like to chime in on that is just to reiterate what I said. You're the best source of knowledge about your home. So whichever way you decide, whether you want to come in and do that yourself or whether you want to hire an agent to do that, you are going to be the best advocate for your property. So if you have condition issues or things about your home that you really want to make sure are communicated to us, make sure that you get that communicated to us, whether that's directly or whether that is by making sure that your agent is aware of it and brings it to your protest. Because we certainly do see sometimes that an agent isn't aware of all the information about your home. So make sure that they're aware.
Okay, somebody asked if you could reiterate the 10% appraisal cap if possible. Can you explain that?
Yes. We're looking at the previous year. And so that's why when you first purchase your home, your homestead can be applied immediately, but it doesn't fall into place until the next year because we have to have something to establish it from. And like I said, doing the math, if you have a home that is valued at 100,000 for the previous year, the next year it can only go to 110,000 based on your homestead cap. And that's just based on the market. The market can go wherever it wants to. It can go up to 200,000 if that's where the sales are going.
All right. Before we get to further questions, because I know the more we kind of go into questions, that triggers more questions and more questions. I want to give Shay the opportunity to come back and finish up her portion of the presentation about the tax bills itself and what your payment options are. So Shay, are you ready?
Yes, thank you so much for your patience. I do apologize for that. I had to go and fix some information and make sure everything else is correct on here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, so let me. Okay. All right, so recent changes to property taxes. This past year we did, and I left off at the school, the general homestead exemption for your property taxes has increased. So as of last year, it was $40,000. This year for your school jurisdiction, we do have that exemption of $100,000 for your property. The homestead exemption is eligible for a prorated date, meaning that if you move into your home not at the beginning of the year, not January 1st. You are still eligible for your homestead exemption to apply to a portion of the year based off of when you moved in, as opposed to having to wait for the first full year in which you were residing in that property for that residence exemption to be applicable. Bear with me. Okay, so we did have some changes that were voted on. Some of these decisions were made by the 88th legislature, including that exemption increase from 40,000 to 100,000, as well as limit the increase of the appraisal on certain properties, which HCAD discussed earlier, as well as requiring the restructure of the method in which school taxes are collected. So that did lead to a good decrease in property taxes for your school jurisdiction, specifically for, our over 65 residents as well. This is a quick view of your tax bill, including the portion at the bottom, which we affectionately refer to as a coupon. This is the portion of your bill that you would tear along the perforated edge and submit in with your payment as a check in the mail. And this would show, of course, your account number, the information in which you are paying these property taxes to, as well as a portion for you to fill out for your payment amount. And this is information that you would send into our office with your payment in the mail. Here is a visual representation of what your exemptions can change your tax bill. Without a homestead exemption on a property of $325,000, your tax bill would end up being approximately $7,153, and this is with no homestead exemption, no over 65, no exemptions to speak of. However, you can see with the homestead exemption that does get reduced. So instead of paying a bill of $7,000 plus, you would be paying a bill of $5,323. So you can see the reduction there with just the homestead exemption. And of course, with our over 65 or disabled exemption, there is a drastic difference versus no exemptions at all being applied to the property. So instead of paying a bill of $7,153, you'd be paying a bill of approximately $2,327, which is quite a drastic difference and emphasizes the importance of making sure that all of your exemptions are up to date and that they are correct, especially if you are within that realm of over 65 or disabled. It truly does make a difference, and it opens a lot of options towards our homeowners. So we do like to make sure that everyone is aware of these exemptions and how great of a difference it can make. Let's see, tax limitations. We refer to these as tax ceilings or as a misnomer, a tax freeze. And essentially this limits the amount that can be collected on your school tax, or some specific jurisdictions. Not all offer a tax freeze, but this applies to the homesteads of over 65 or older exemptions as well as disability exemptions. These ceilings usually affect your school, meaning that you would not be collected above a certain amount for your property taxes. And the reason I say freeze is a misnomer is because you can always be collected on less, but you would never be collected on more. So a tax ceiling is truly the better explanation of that word. Tax deferrals. Tax deferrals are available for, again, our over 65 and disabled homeowners. Tax deferrals are a postponement of your property taxes, meaning that you would be given additional time in which to pay your property taxes once you have applied for this exemption through the appraisal district. Once that's been applied to your property, this avoids litigation on your property. It avoids our attorneys adding their additional collection fees and such to your property because of non-payment or late payment. In addition, this affects your interest paid because as opposed to paying for the full penalty and interest fees for your account, you would be paying a 5% per year, meaning that it would be a percentage of that for the months leading up. Deferral ends upon the change of ownership, so the sale of the property or if ownership changes from one person to another, that is what would end the tax deferral. It is a delay in your property taxes. It does not cancel your property taxes. It does not make you completely exempt of tax. However, it does offer you some peace of mind due to not being able to face litigation, as well as having that additional time in which to pay at a much reduced penalty and interest fee. Again, this is something that is available to our over 65 homesteads, as well as disabled owner homesteads and disabled veteran homesteads. And that is something that you would want to go and apply for with the Harris Central Appraisal District. We do recommend those of you who have not completed the payments of your home or are still in the process of mortgaging for your property, that you speak to your mortgage company prior to applying for this tax deferral, due to the fact that they are going to be they're going to be able to tell you if that is something that they are able or capable of applying to your account. We have options for payment. Whenever making your payments here, we do offer flexible payment plans, as well as giving the option of paying your taxes early. And of course, if your taxes are paid prior to collections beginning with our attorney's offices, there would be no attorney's fees. This does avoid collection efforts and litigation from proceeding further than the point in which you create this payment plan. And we can begin as early as your first delinquency date, which for most of us is going to be February 1st. Our quarterly payment plan is another option that we have for our property tax owners. We do offer this to our over 65 and disabled exempt properties once more. This allows you to make your payments in 4 quarterly installments as opposed to 1 lump installment at the beginning of the year in January. This would apply to, once again, our over 65, disabled, and disabled veteran property owners, as well as surviving spouses of the above. There is no interest or penalty to be collected on these quarterly payments if paid timely, and this applies to all unpaid taxes for that year. You must have those exemptions on your property in order for this to be applicable. These due dates would change, as opposed to being all due January 1st or January 31st. It would be due end of January, end of March, end of May, and end of July. So this upcoming quarterly is going to be the 3rd quarterly installment for most folks. Payment plans. This is pertaining to our property owners who are not over 65 or disabled veterans. So pretty much everyone else. We also do offer this to our non-homestead properties, this being your properties that are rented to other leasees or leasors, along with unused land and things of that nature. The homestead plan does the homestead plan and our regular installment payment plans are both applicable for 12, 24, 36 months. And it can apply to current and prior years of taxes. Both payment plans are due at the end of every month. The difference would be in the terms. So your payment plan would be frozen at your penalty would be frozen at the month in which you create your payment plan. So in February, that would be 6%, and then interest would increase at 1% per month versus our general installment plan, which accrues penalty and interest fees as one regularly would without a payment plan. However, it does avoid litigation being collected on your account. You would not assess those additional collection fees if you request for this payment plan prior to your account going to collections. We do have our payment options listed up here if anyone would like to have a copy of that and that information. We are able to accept payments online, by mail, by phone, or in person. All of our information is listed down there. Our online payments are processed through our website. Just bear in mind, regardless of where or the method in which you create this payment, if you are paying with a card, there is a 2.45% fee that is assessed for card payments, debit or credit. E-checks are free. So if you would like to go online and make a payment online, you are able to do so with an e-check and your banking information, and that information would be assessed without that additional 2.45% fee. We can accept cash at our branch offices. We do have about approximately 16 locations that you're able to go in and make those payments to. Just bear in mind the timeliness of when you're going in, but you're always able to go into a branch office Monday through Friday and make your payment there. You are able to make full or partial payments to our offices, except when making your payments by phone. By phone, it would have to be a payment in full. Apologies. And this last slide is going to be our contact information once it appears. We have our website online, as well as our email should you like to reach out to us with a specific question or request or form, along with our phone number should you need to reach out to us to speak to someone specifically. We are very excited to be able to assist you in any questions that you might have. I'm going to jump into the chat here in a moment to make sure that I'm not missing any questions from you. Just, be aware that, as we mentioned before, your information is private. So in order to keep that so, we would recommend that if you have specific questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at that email address that's going to pop up on the screen, and we'll be glad to help you there.
Shay, can you read the email address and things aloud? Because I know that there's one person that's only joining by phone that they can't see them.
Oh, sure. So our website is going to be www.hct, as in Thomas, ax.net. Our email address is going to be tax.office@hctx.net. And our phone number is 713-274-8000. And I apologize, I'm having some technical difficulties because I don't believe that you guys are seeing the same screen that I am.
We're on the payment options screen.
Still, and I'm hoping that this will hop up there as well. But if not, I'll type it into the chat just in case someone needs to access that, quicker than my computer is willing to supply.
Okay. Was there another slide after that one?
No, after that contact information, that's the end.
Okay. All right. Good deal. All right. So let's get back to some of these questions that are in the, that just kind of moved some things around. All right. Let's see. Can you age out of paying taxes?
No, you are, as far as for, you pay your taxes are based on your appraised value minus any exemptions that are applied to the account. So your appraised value and your can change from year to year, but your exemptions are only going to cover so much. So even your exemptions are not always going to cover the entire appraised value of your property, no matter how old you are. It's dependent upon what your property is appraised at.
And if I might just kind of jump in there, I think this person might also be referred to some older property owners who may live in property that is below, once they turn 65 and they get that $275,000
Right.
exemption from the city and 260 or 275 from the county, 260 from the city. If their property is less than worth less than that, then they may not be paying taxes on it. So I think that might be a part of that, part of that question. So it's not necessarily aging out, it's getting those exemptions, and then it sort of depends on the value of your property at that point. And Tawana, if you want to elaborate a little more, that's.
Yes. So for example, if your exemptions on your property, let's say your property is valued at $120,000, but your exemptions, which would be your residential homestead exemption and your over 65 exemption, the over 65 exemption plus the residential homestead, it may be that you don't, if you don't pay taxes because your exemptions outweigh the appraised value of your property.
So that's basically for those folks that have that myth that they've been kind of listening to a lot of other folks. Well, after you get to a certain age, I don't have to pay taxes anymore. I don't owe anything, that kind of thing. Or also the mix up that especially a lot of seniors get when it comes to, oh, I thought my screen was open. When it comes to the deferral as opposed to the exemption. Sometimes when they assume that they are applying for an exemption where they don't actually have to pay, I'm sorry, when they're applying for the deferral and they think that they are actually getting an exemption. Can you guys kind of reiterate again about the difference between the deferral and the actual exemption itself, and if it has to be paid back?
Okay, so with an exemption, your exemptions are available to you for the time that you own and occupy your property. So those discounts are not taken off of your account unless at which time either someone passes away or you physically move from the property. The deferral is to defer your tax bill amounts themselves. It does not cancel out your tax bill. What it does is it puts it to whereas as we were advised earlier by the representative from the tax office, you can make installment payments, but those amounts are still due. So if you do incur a tax bill and you have a deferral on your account, if those amounts are not paid and that deferral is taken off, then those amounts will become due. But if you have an exemption on your account, which is your residential homestead and you're over 65, or your disability and your residential homestead, those exemptions take from the amount of the taxes that you would have to pay. So that gives you that discount from your appraised value, and then you pay taxes on whatever's left over. In some cases that there may not be anything left over because your exemptions outweigh your value. But in other cases, you'll have an amount that's due that would need to be paid. And if you have a deferral and don't pay it, then once that deferral is taken off, it will become due.
Thanks. Yeah, so it's so important for people to remember that the exemptions are based on your eligibility, that you are getting that discount. You do not have to pay those back. The deferral is simply a postponement of taxes. They are going to eventually become due, whether you pay them or whether whoever the new owners of the property are, those taxes will be due.
Yes.
I see a question in here that says, what's the purpose of protesting the market value if you pay taxes on the appraised value? I'm so, they're a little confused there. You,
By law, we can only give you a protest on your market value because everybody doesn't have a any exemptions and different things of that nature. The appraised value is just showing you the difference with your exemptions applied. So everybody is protesting on the market value. Now, when you're coming in, your goal is to get that value lowered as lower as possible, you know, to get you some breaks on your taxes. But we can only do a protest on that because that's the even value on all the houses. You may have 3 or 4 houses that are exactly the same. They may all be listed with a $200,000 market value, but based on different exemptions and different things of that nature, one may be at 180, the other one at 175, the other one at 160. It all depends on different things that occur with those homes, which is why we protest the market value because that's the even value.
and you always want to protest because you want that value that the appraisal district sets for you to be as low as possible because that's lowers your actual tax bill. Market value, when you get ready to go and sell it on the open market, that's completely different. Those are two different things. So you want that value to be as low as you can possibly get it because you want to lower your tax bill every year. So that's the difference, and that's mostly why you protest and you try to get that number as low as possible. You want to lower your tax bill. There was a question that was emailed to me. It says, my parents passed away. I found out that someone convinced my father to change his taxes to deferred. What should which should have been exempt from taxes because he had a homestead, but that's something altogether different. Do I have to pay any penalties on the deferrals, and how long do I have to pay it? That's a Shay question.
Yes. So deferrals, if and I'm sorry, the father had passed away or he is still living in that property?
Passed away.
So once the homeowner has passed away and the exemption has been removed, meaning that ownership changes over, we send out a notice of letting you know of these changes to the property values due to that exemption and the deferral being removed. You have 181 days to complete that payment of whatever deferred taxes have been unpaid to that property. And then once those 181 days are up, we do start collecting penalty and interest fees for the property in the full amount, as opposed to in that 5% per year as it was when he was deferred. But if he's deferred, he should have the homestead and over 65 already applied to that property.
Okay, that's another kind of question. It didn't provide that information, so.
Oh. And of
Okay.
course, if he has questions specifically in reference to his account, he's more than welcome to contact us, and we'll be able to assist him here at one of our offices or over the phone if that's easier.
Okay.
I think the broader answer to that for the listening audience is that once a homeowner has passed away and has had a deferral, they will have 180 days, or she said 181, before the initial penalties and interest, the regular penalties and interest are put back on the account. So it's important when folks do get a deferral to make sure they discuss it with a family member, to know that is a procedure, because that can often have some very unfortunate consequences for the heirs.
Yes, communicate, have the conversation. And I know you got a lot of these parents, grandparents, elderly people that do not want people in their business. They don't want people to know that that they're having financial issues or whatever, and they don't, that they have to even apply for the deferral because, they can't afford to pay their tax bill. Have the conversation, because otherwise your heirs are going to come back and it's like, oh, I only have 6 months to pay thousands of dollars that you haven't paid in property taxes. Yeah, definitely have the conversation. Let's see. I want to make sure that I'm kind of going through and making sure that I'm only touching on a couple of the questions. If I did not file a protest for the previous year and receive no reduction this year, does this affect receiving a reduction for this year's taxes? Ooh, another question just popped in. I couldn't read it fast enough.
if I'm understanding the concept of that question, if you didn't get your value lowered in a previous year, does that affect the current year? No, it does not. Each year stands alone. We're looking at sales of each year. So you may have a different sales market in your neighborhood this year than you had the previous year.
Okay. All righty. Okay, I do believe those are the main questions that I got. Okay, what if I'll do it? You already went over that part already too. I'm trying to read questions that were emailed to me, monitor Facebook, and look at the chat box all at the same time. So just trying to make sure that I don't miss anybody's questions that were sent out that I want to make sure that they get addressed. And you said you can go back 2 years to claim homestead exemption if you haven't done it. Two tax
2 years
bill.
plus the
tax
previous.
year.
plus
That
the
is correct.
current year.
Okay. All right. Since even after rejecting the settlement offer and going to a hearing, from my understanding, it is possible to walk away with no tax discounts at all. Is that correct?
Yes, if you go through your hearing and there's just not an agreement on those things, after that, but that is all the free steps that you would have to take. You can take it to court and things of that nature afterwards. But it is very possible to come out of there and people don't agree with exactly what you're saying about your property.
Okay. How long does a person have to be out of the home before disqualifying for a homestead exemption due to a medical condition? Like example, if they have to move into a nursing facility or something like that, do they lose their homestead exemption?
Tawana, I can answer
I'm
that.
sorry, can you repeat the question for me? I
How long does
apologize.
how long does a person how long may a person be out of their home before disqualifying for their homestead exemption due to a medical condition, like going into a nursing care facility or something like that?
Whenever a property owner goes into a care facility, as long as the intent to return home is there, we don't tell them that they can only stay in a facility for a specific amount of years. So to answer that question, as long as they're in a facility and the facility sends us the documentation that we need in order to maintain their homestead exemption, then they can keep their exemption.
Tawana, can you also mention just about the confirmation cards that we send in December?
Yes, we send out the confirmation cards in December of every year confirming that the exemptions will remain the same on the account. And also we ask that you provide, if there are changes, we ask that you contact us and let us know. That's the purpose of the confirmation card, to let you know that your exemptions will stay the same, and also to advise that if there has been a change, then you should contact us. If those confirmation cards are returned to us via return mail, then what will happen is we'll send out a letter for our property owners that are over the age of 65. We'll send out a letter advising them that we received a confirmation card that was returned to us. With that letter, there's a questionnaire where they can answer questions as far as for what's going on at the home. When they answer us, once they provide a response, then we will go from there. Sometimes there's a facility involved where the property owner has been placed in a facility. And the only thing we do is we go back and we request a letter from the facility and leave their exemptions in place. As far as for property owners with return confirmation cards for the residential homestead, those, I would say, just make sure that, around about December, make sure to look out in the mail for your confirmation cards, because if the confirmation card is returned for a property owner that does not have an over 65 exemption on the account, then their exemptions are automatically removed. And then once we notified, well, we don't send out a notification for the confirmation card returning for the residential homestead exemption property owners. It's only if you're over the age of 65.
Okay. There was another question here. How do you lower the property taxes on a vacant lot that is next to an eyesore property? I've seen this a lot in a lot of neighborhoods where you've got just a vacant lot that's been cleared and you've got a car shop or somebody
All right.
working on cars in their lot next door. So you've got your empty lot that's clean that's kind of sitting in between these two things where you've got a junk dealer over here and a car, a pseudo car repair person right here. What do you do for the value of that lot?
It would really depend on kind of how the sales are going of lots in that area, because we still have to judge it based on what the sales are. Because if you're not actually selling that property, that doesn't mean it's any less worth. We've actually had properties that are just like that, and somebody ends up selling it for a lot more than it's worth because they end up building, townhomes on it or whatever they may do. It just depends on what's going to go on in that area.
Mhm. Okay. There was a question here. I know I saw back Ms. Twan had put in about if somebody needed to reschedule their their ARB. What's the number that you call or who do you contact if you need to ever reschedule your hearing?
The telephone number to contact to reschedule is 713-812-5860. That's also located on our website. If you go to hcad.org and then under About, click on the Contact Us drop down, and it will give you all of our contact telephone numbers as well as address information.
Ms. Mabel, how does somebody get on the ARB or appraisal review board, and who are these people on the appraisal review board?
Okay, the appraisal review board is a group of citizens that are up until this year have been interviewed and appointed by an administrative law judge, and these are the people who sit in those panels of 1 or 3 people and listen to your presentation on what your property value should be versus HCAT's, and then they make the decision on whether or not to on what to do with your value. That's the formal hearing. And these are they are trained and receive training from the comptroller and from others regarding the valuation process, but they're also kind of like a jury of your peers in terms of listening to both sides of the story, which is why it's important for you to bring in have your evidence organized and brought in as well. I mentioned that they are up until this year, they have been appointed by administrative law judge. Next year, beginning with the folks that we start recruiting for the appraisal review board in September of each year. So if anyone out there who is interested in being on doing that, check out our website come mid-September, and the application process, which is when the application process begins. Next year, you will be the process for selecting those is going to switch to our HCAD board of directors, and they will be interviewed and hired by them, which is going back to the way it was a number of years ago. But also, I wanted to mention to you that so that's going to be an important part of a process that you all may already be familiar with, which is the HCAD board elections that are taking place, have taken place, as well as the runoff that's going to be taking place. But choosing the ARB board members as well as the chief appraiser is going to be part of that job. But anyone who's interested again in the appraisal review board and joining the appraisal review board, please check out our website come September.
Okay, and I think that would be a good transition into hearing from the Harris County Elections Office that was interested in kind of making a quick announcement for you guys really quick because we know we've got a runoff election that's coming up. So we're going to have Miss Shirley Wong to to give you guys some quick information here real quick when since we're talking about, and then we'll get back to these two questions that just popped up.
Thank you for giving me the time to provide information in the upcoming elections regarding HCAD and on the June 15th election. So the May 4th election that we had not a little while ago was the first opportunity that the voter of Harris counties had to cast a ballot for the 3 unpaid positions for HCAD Board of Directors. And the HCAD Board of Directors will now consist of 3 at-large elected members, the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector herself, and 5 appointed positions representing local taxing entities. Now, because May 4th, we only had 1 candidate received an absolute major vote of the 3 HCAD contests, a runoff election will take place on Saturday, June 15th. That will determine the winners for the remaining HCAD Board of Directors places 2 and 3. So if you were not aware that there was an election going on May 4th about the HCAD Board of Directors, please register to be a voter and also vote on June 15th. Early voting starts the week before, and we'll love to give you more information about the voting turnout for May 4th. That was 2% of Harris County's registered voters. So not a lot of people knew about this election, and only 2% of the registered voters in Harris County voted on May 4th. And please come out to vote because this Board of Directors, they do a lot of administrative decisions on how to appraise your property and who to hire, that sort of important work. And also regarding the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's position, we are having a primary runoff election on May 28th. So that is the runoff for the partisan election. And on the ballot of the Democratic ballots, there is going to be a county tax assessor collector's positions be available on the ballot on May 28th. So if you voted March primary, you can continue to vote for your selected party on May 28th on their runoff positions. And thank you for giving me the time to provide this information. Thank you, Nia.
Okay, well, we want to get as many folks out to vote whenever we can. So thank you very much, Shirley, for providing the information.
And anyone who's wondering about the elections, that was and where that all came from, that was part of the Senate Bill 2 constitutional amendment that everyone voted on in November, which also increased their school tax exemption from 40,000 to 100,000. The elections and a number of other changes were also part of that bill.
Okay. So they knew they were voting on the increase, but
May not have read the fine print. But,
didn't read the fine print. So yeah, there was another part to that. All right. Thank you very much. Can you reiterate those dates again for early election again?
Thank you. June election, the election date itself is June 15th. Early voting will start June 3rd, all the way up till June 11th. So please come out during early voting. If not, June 15th is the election day for HCAD runoff election. Thank you.
Okay. There was a question in here that I saw that popped up for you, Shay. If someone had a correction motion for a previous year, or if there was an overpayment, or even in the case when they've got that exemption that they haven't applied for in a couple of years, what's the process for receiving the refund?
Perfect timing. Sorry about that. Wait, I was actually in the middle of typing that. But yes, so whenever a exemption is added to a property that previously did not have that exemption and they go back those 2 years, yes, you will be receiving a refund of the overpayments made to the property. So any overpayments made to the account will be refunded back. Now, when it's a change in exemptions due to, say adding a homestead and over 65 that was retroactively added, that is added as an automatic refund. They'll go ahead and process it for you and you'll get a refund back in the mail. However, changes in so overpayments that are done in error. So if you pay if you pay the same account twice, that sort of thing, that is something that would need to be applied for. We have an application that you would be able to fill out on our website, and you can submit it into us by email, mail, or fax, or by coming into one of our offices, and they can, have that inter-office to us, and we will begin that process of getting that overpayment refunded.
Okay. All right. And to just answer that question that was just put into the chat about the recording and the chat conversations, there were a lot of questions. There were more questions that were in here that I did not ask. So when I send out the link of the recording, the chat conversation will also be included in there for you guys to kind of go back and see some of those questions that were asked, or in case you didn't get some of the phone numbers or what have you, other information all that chat conversation will be included. And if you're joining us on Facebook and you'd like to have access to the chat, I will put my email address in there, and you can reach out to myself or to Rachel so that we can make sure that the chat information is out, or the recording that's got the chat on it is actually sent out to you guys as well. So I believe that's all we have. Man, we are on fire today. We're trying to get these questions out. We know that there's a lot of questions coming up. The protest deadline is coming up, which is why we moved up the presentation for today. Typically, we have the property tax and the exemptions information scheduled for the 4th Wednesday of each month, but we knew that deadline was coming, so we want to make sure that you guys got all the information, got your questions answered. You know who to call, who to contact when you have questions throughout this process, because like somebody said in here, it's a little intimidating when you're having to go through this for the first time, or you're not really sure, or what somebody else may have said and this person may have said, and it kind of it begins to become a whole lot. So you want to kind of drown out the noise, and we wanted to make sure that you guys got the most up-to-date information from the experts in these fields. So which is why we provide the information that we do every month. Again, like I had stated at the beginning of the introduction, that this is kind of the purpose of a month of service, so that we can provide as much information and resources to the community as we possibly can, because a lot of folks don't know where to go for questions, and these sessions are free. And thank you very much for attending and to participate, and feel free to come back as often as you like. We even, when we first started out, actually have a couple of family members that were sitting around the computer and everybody was watching at the same time. So do the same thing with the recording. If you guys want to go back and watch any of the other presentations, make it a family evening and sit and have conversations so y'all can actually start the dialogue, because there's a lot of information that's out there, a lot of information that a lot of family members need that they just don't have or don't have access to. Start having the conversations with your family so we can get as much information out as we possibly can. You see, I was 44 years old when my husband died. If alive, he's going to be 65. Am I eligible for surviving spouse exemptions even at that point? There was a question, Mr. Ron.
Hi. Okay, so
he would have been 65 had he still been living.
no, you wouldn't be eligible for the surviving spouse over 65 exemption.
Okay. All right, good.
55 at the time of death.
Right.
You have to be 55 at the time of death?
That's correct.
Oh, the surviving spouse has to be 55?
At the time of death, yes.
Okay. All right, got it. Oh, because she's 44, then she wouldn't be eligible. Okay, got it. This is my second year attending, and it's really helped, allowed me to ask more questions that make more sense after doing the process, to fine tune and to help others, especially our elderly that don't know social media. Thank you very much. All right, Rachel, is there anything else that you'd like to add or contribute to what we've got?
Just so we will have our coffee and conversation on May 21st in person at the Southwest Multi-Service Center. We will have a representative from the health department to talk about services that are available through them for our senior community. And then also, if you're looking to get any, to see if you're eligible to receive any legal assistance, whether it's through estate planning, criminal expungements, et cetera, you can definitely complete our pre-assessment form and to determine your eligibility with one of our partners via the A Month of Service program.
Okay, and that information will also be included, the flyer, along with the schedule of the remaining presentations for the month. Tomorrow, I know Ms. Tawana was talking about for inherited exemptions and things like that, and completing an affidavit of heirship. We have our inherited property tax workshop that's scheduled for tomorrow about clearing title, other exemptions and things like that that are available for heirs. That presentation is scheduled for tomorrow at 1 p.m. So feel free to come back to get the information from staff attorneys that can kind of go over what happens in the probate process or what happens after someone passes, if they had a will or did not have a will. You know, what is it that if there are multiple heirs to a property, what is the process? What do they need to do to make sure that they keep clear title or that they get that property switched over to someone's name? There was one quick question that I wanted to that I just saw. Yes, you will be able to share the presentation. Please feel free to forward the link to as many people as you possibly can. Someone asked about reiterating. Can you elaborate more about what you meant about protests based on equity? I see Jamie was answering the question, but Jamie or Joseph, what does it mean to protest based on equity?
Yes, that's just a protest saying that not looking at the sales, but looking at how we appraise other people's homes. Did we equally appraise your home in the same type of way? Did we look at their property? You know, are we giving your property a lot more value than we're giving their property? That's what an equity protest would be.
Okay. So with that being said, y'all did an awesome job today. Thank y'all very much for the tag teaming. We had a couple of little hiccups, but that's okay. We still got the information out there that everybody needed. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to the respective departments here, or feel free to contact Rachel or myself, and we'll make sure that your question does get forwarded to whoever it does need to be submitted to as well. So thank y'all very much. We really, really appreciate you guys taking the time out this afternoon to provide this information to the community and for the partnership of all of the A Month of Service partners. Thank y'all very, very much.
Y'all have a good day.
Bye-bye.
You all,
You all have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, and you stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
all right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce. Thank you, Ms. Anna, Dahlia, Ms. Jamie. Thank y'all for submitting your questions. So we were able to have some dialogue here. But y'all have a good one.